know, this was just a big field. This being a high school, of course, it had all the buildings associated with the high school. The administration building is the only one that we kept, is refurbished, and now houses Marine Discovery Center and the Artist Workshop, another great partner on this project. So what we did was take out all the buildings that we couldn't keep to prepare the site for these other features. And so the feature that you're seeing behind me now is salt marsh. So this, in fact, is what the property used to look like before they filled it back in the 60s. What we've done is take out roughly 45,000 cubic yards of fill. So if you run 2 big dump trucks a day, which carry about 20 loads each, you can get maybe 100 a day if the rain stays off you. So it gives you an idea of how many months it takes in order to do this sort of thing. And the goal was to take it back down to salt marsh elevation, so we used the adjacent marsh across the way as our target elevation. And specifically, we looked for areas that have not so much mangroves, but marsh grasses, what we call succulents, plants that hold a lot of water in their leaves. Our goal, of course, is to produce lots of salt marsh plants that can be used in regional restoration. So that's what you see out there at the moment. It's mostly smooth cordgrass out on the marsh surface itself, so that's the predominant plant that we planted on this site in the marsh. Then begs the question, what do you do with 45,000 cubic yards of fill? And the fact that it's state property makes it difficult to easily get rid of the dirt, as in sell it or something like that. So what we decided to do is listen to the community, of course, very important to us. So right behind you here is an amphitheater. One of the things that the community asked for, in light of the fact that we lost the auditorium here, was to build some sort of community facility. So we decided on an amphitheater. And this has been planted with very soft salt grass. We're hoping it's really going to fill in. It'll be a nice soft place to sit. Most of the salt grasses are a little bit spiny. This is one of the softer ones, so we're really hoping it's going to take over that. And then, of course, we'll be building some sort of stage or band shell over on this side. And we're able to make a nice clam shell with the dirt, so it'll be good for us acoustically. Then secondarily, to the north of that is a pad for a future building. Some of you may have seen the master site plan for this. We plan on having future buildings, perhaps a fish hatchery in the future. So we just wanted to prepare for that by building a pad. And then the bulk of the dirt, which is roughly 30,000 cubic yards, went into what we're calling Mount Morgan. So it's basically just our spoil deposition area. Had a few challenges in stabilizing it, so we had to sod it last week, but we feel like we're in a place now where it's going to be stable. But one of the benefits of it is it provides a great vantage point for observation. So the next part of the tour, in just a few minutes, is for those who are willing and able, we'll make our way to the north side along this trail system, which will be part of the property, make our way to the top of the mountain. But before we do that, there's one other key feature that I want to point out, and that's what you're seeing over here. So one of the challenges we have with coastal properties is securing them from erosion. And unfortunately, we have a long history of hardening shorelines by using engineered structures like seawalls and revetments and so forth, which really aren't good habitat. And in some ways, they're not even really good for erosion control, because all of them will fail at some point. Seawalls, for example, all of them fail at some point. They erode at the toe, they get rainfall runoff from the top, and eventually fall over. So what we wanted to do is demonstrate the various techniques that we know of for stabilizing shorelines. So you can see the full spectrum here, and we'll have educational signage that introduces a new website on this topic of living shorelines in the future. So stay tuned for that. But what you see as you start all the way over at the water's edge is coquina, which is natural limestone, so ancient coral and fossilized shell. So coquina boulders. And then as you move toward us, you find a seawall with various improvements in front of it. There are ways that we can improve seawalls and help their longevity by putting coquina in front of it, or oyster bags, or a planter with native plants in it. And then as you come this way further, you see a retaining wall, which is basically just a seawall that's far upland, but you can put native plants and oysters in front of it. Then we have a kayak launch, one of the new amenities of the site for people to be able to launch kayaks and canoes. And then we have terracing, so you see the three-tiered terracing there with native plants and oyster bags And then lastly, the long series that you see here of native species. And we use multiple native species. Again, elevation is critical to the survivorship of certain species. So it looks like we got it pretty well dialed in. We've got about 98% survival of our plants. Really happy about that. And thanks to all the volunteers. Over 500 hours of volunteer time and over 22,000 plants at this point. But as Chad mentioned, it's not too late if you haven't planted anything yet. We'll be out here Thursday, Friday, putting in a few more thousand plants. So any questions at this point before we head on to the mountain?
Yep, what will the terracing be for? Is that where you terraced it? What is the purpose of that?
It's just an example of a way to stabilize an eroding shoreline. It's one of the cheaper versions of stabilization. It also gives you lots of opportunities to put different types of plants. So some of the plants will be going in Thursday, Friday for anyone interested in helping. So certain flowering plants, for example, it just gives you more options for the number of plants that you can put in. And it's also a very stable situation. That can be used on even the steepest of situations. If you guys are familiar with the Lagoon House down in Melbourne, it was one of the sites that fared really well during the hurricanes, unlike most of the shorelines there. But it was terraced, and they've done a tremendous job, even on a very steep slope. Anybody else?
What's the name of this grass? Salt?
Okay, so the top of the slope is one of the salt grasses, and it's paspalum. Very salt tolerant, very drought tolerant, so one of my favorites. We even planted some down in the marsh where you see the smooth cordgrass, and it has survived. So it can survive the tidal action, it can survive drought, so for that reason it's one of my favorites. Another one is the tallest one you see here. There are numerous types of cordgrass in Florida. This is one of my favorites because it can also take lots of drought or lots of salt. So it's one of my favorites to use, and that one's sand cordgrass.
Jeff, can you explain the water levels, the kayak landing idea, and how the water levels, how far up does the water come? And,
Okay.
kayak?
Well, we lucked out in that it's low tide right now, so you're able to really see the marsh. At high tide, this looks just very much like a lake, except for the two fingers of high marsh that you see sticking out. So the goal in building the kayak launch was to do it in such a way that it's going to have water regardless of tide. So now we're at almost the lowest of tides, and you can still see enough water there where we could still be able to launch a kayak.